Have you been so attached to an outcome and been disappointed when it didn't happen? Well, today I'm going to talk about why being attached to an outcome so much is actually quite dangerous and what you can do instead around this. And if you stay until the end, I have an extra point for you then as well. Now, if you want to connect me more on social media, I'll leave my links in the show notes below. Now, this is actually quite funny because I had to re-record this episode because my internet disconnected as I was making this. And I was, funnily enough, talking about the outcome. Now, obviously, the outcome I wanted was to record a podcast episode and put it out. And the internet cut out. So do you know what I did? I lived my talk and I just went, it's all right, it'll be fine. I'll just redo it. So this is an example so many times in my life when I have been attached to an outcome and it's just led to disappointment. Now, I've learned this from my teachers, not my teachers at school, but, the teachers who really made a difference in my life. Like the teachers in like personal growth have really made an impact on me, like talking about like, don't get too attached to the outcome. And I was talking to one of my great mentors earlier in the breathwork community, and we were talking about this subject as well. And it's really, really powerful. I've noticed there's been areas in my life, and like in life, that if you notice, some people, and this may apply to you, some people in one area of their life, they're like absolutely smashing it. Like, they're not worried. It just goes right for them. Yet in other areas, they're so fearful, like it's got to work and it doesn't work, right? So I'll use some examples first of all, when I was talking to my mentor on breathwork, he said he's worked with like a couple of billionaires, actually. He's got a very successful breathwork business. And he says they're disconnected in like relationships. That like, they're not even worried about money. They just mastered it, right? Yet, can you think of someone, maybe you apply to this, where it's just like, you've got a beautiful relationship or relationships, it doesn't just mean intimate, and you're just always worried about money, you put so much attachment to it and it just never goes right for you. Or maybe you really struggle in health, but your money's all right, it's all right. There are some people who like are really successful in all areas, of course, right? Now, for me, health is not something I actually worry about too much, right? And I never get seriously ill. If I get a little bit out of shape from like Christmas or a holiday, I don't worry about getting back into shape. I just focus on what I need to do, and I know I'll get back into shape. Now, of course, as you age and all these other factors, it can put an impact on you. Yeah, I'm probably going to annoy some people. And again, I'm always coming from my truth. You hear all these stories in health of people like, well, I've got this certain like metabolism and like I'm like this age or blah, 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 all this kind of thing. And that's just a disempowering story. So I've seen people in their 80s absolutely in shredded shape. They just know the mechanics, right? And they don't get too attached to what they look like. It just works out, right? Now, for me, I'll be totally honest. One area in my like teens and early 20s is something I've worked through and got and developed was my dating and romantic area. You may have heard of me talk about this before. But like I used to put so much attachment to like it working out and hoping like the relationship or something would develop, right, with the girl. And that kind of fear mentality I'd try and hide away. But energetically, it put out like a fear frequency. Okay. So when you I want to talk about this because it's something I've just learned across personal growth. I want to share with you. When you put too much importance to like an outcome happening, it's not that you shouldn't set the outcome. It's not that shouldn't have targets. You need that in life, else how would you know where you're going, what you're aiming for? When you put so much attachment on something, it can be quite damaging. It can be like lead to disappointment, and then like the fear starts coming up and then forces work against you. Now, of course, this sounds a little bit like spiritual and all that kind of thing. Yet, if you actually write down evidence for your life where things have worked out when you didn't have too much attachment to it, and things haven't worked out because you have too much attachment, then you start noticing things. Even just do this in your day-to-day and small things. like I say, it's about having an outcome, but being not too reliant on it. I'm going to go through a process and a few things that really helped me through this, because you may be like, well, I really do want the thing. So I'm going to go through that. Ask yourself this though, how's it helping you by being attached to things and being like disappointed? Probably not so good if you're anything like me. So here's the first thing. Be very clear on what's like the vision, and then what's the next milestone? What do you want to hit? Like, you may want to have a money target, you may want to have a health target, you may want to have a certain kind of relationship target, right? Be clear on like the vision. And I talked about this on the previous episode, like how you break this down. Like, have a vision, have like a next big milestone, and have a weekly target, right? Just focusing on what is your next big milestone in the next 6 to 12 months, right? And you can have a weekly target on that. And then you're going to focus on that. Just focus on achieving your targets, because that's going to excite you, and just taking the action you can. So that's the first thing, right? Not being drawn to this big vision and this big like idea that you want, right? The second thing is having a plan B, right? Have a plan B. If it doesn't work out, this is a good thing to say. It's this or something better. One of my very first coaches, it used to be one of their sayings. It was a really powerful saying. So like, something doesn't come your way, you know something else is going to come better. And I've seen this many times in my life. Like, I wanted a certain job and I didn't really, I just wanted more money, and it didn't work out. Yet an amazing job came down the line. I remember hoping it would work out with one girl, like this was years ago, and it didn't. And then I met the most amazing girl like 2 weeks later, and I was just like, okay, it didn't work out, kind of thing, right? So having a plan B of like, okay, something better will show up, or I'm going to do this, but not be attached again if it doesn't work out. And then thirdly, building the confidence that you'll come back. Like, if anything goes wrong, like you bounce back from things before. Now, again, this can go in like a journal. You can write down like all the times you bounce back from things that haven't worked out, right? Maybe it's personal, professional. Maybe it's like you got fired, or maybe you got rejected from a job, or someone finished a relationship with you, or a friend left you, or you lost someone, or something like that, right? Knowing that even if things hurt, that you've bounced back from things before, that can be a really powerful thing and realization as well. Now, I've got a final point I want to share. I want to mention again, though, if you want to connect me more on social media, I'll leave my links in the show notes below. The final point I would share is practice on small things first. So don't think of like the big things, like you want to find, you want suddenly, £1 million a year. That's great, right? Maybe that's just a bit of a drop. You could say, I want £1 million a year, but I'm not actually that attached to it. That may be a bit of a jump if you're like earning like 40, 50,000 pounds a year, right? Because there is going to be a little bit of importance in the background there, right? Or like, I want to be married in the next 2 years, and then every single date you're like, I hope this better work out, right? Maybe you just do something smaller. You do something smaller, you're like, oh, I really hope, I'm really looking to lose this amount of weight this week, right? And it's not a massive target, and you're like, I'm just going to take the action, and if it happens, it happens, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. And then you found you lost a couple more pounds. Great, amazing. So you got an example, and you write that down, and you keep logging it. So that's what I really wanted to share with you. I won't dive too much into the spiritual side of it and all the counterbalancing forces of the universe and all that kind of thing. All I would invite you to do is, when you see that things show up, when you're not so focused on the attachment and it's like an outcome you wanted, but you weren't too focused whether it happened or not, write it down, no matter how small. And when you've been so like fearful of something happening and it not happening, now, can you be fearful of something and it still happen? Yeah, of course, right? But think about things that have broken through or not worked because you're so fearful, right? Note those down too, because that'll give your logical mind evidence of this happening as well. So I appreciate you for being here, and remember to lead with your heart and not with fear.